Hello and welcome back to the CT Educator podcast. So, in today's podcast episode, we are going to talk about, is your CT training adequate? Now, let's think about that for a second. I'm going to ask that question again. Is your CT training adequate? I can tell you I've asked this question so many times to so many technologists that I've trained over the years, and I keep getting the same answer. What do you think that answer is? No, right? So why do we think that our CT training isn't adequate? Why do we think that we don't have the tools and the education to navigate how we want to perform those optimal exams when we're on the CT floor? So I can think of probably a couple of reasons. One, it's who you were trained by. A lot of times we do come across other technologists that have had minimal training themselves. They aren't sure of what they're really looking at sometimes, and they can't really explain the how or why we do certain things. So it's click here, click here, click here. And that just really doesn't do a service to you, especially if you're a brand new tech out on the floor learning CT for the very first time. And just saying click here, click here, click here really doesn't emphasize what you really should be learning. So I think a lot of it has to do, which is going to my second point, is that hospital-based programs have really gone away and just become extinct. I cannot find any hospital-based programs that exist today. Most of those programs have transitioned into the community colleges, some universities, which will end up costing you, tens of thousands of dollars. They have transitioned more of those hospital-based programs into a college setting. Now, there's nothing wrong with going to a CT school. I did not go to a CT school. I've been in the business for 20 years and I was trained on the job, like most people in the industry have been if you've been a tech 10 years or longer. Now, I know that some places will train you on the job, but a lot of times they ask you to come in on your own time, which doesn't really offer you a lot of incentive to do it. Now, I was paid on the job to do it because at the time, back in 2002, there was a high demand and a high need. And the hospital that I worked at was struggling for techs. So I decided to do it, didn't know what I was getting myself into. And it's been a fun ride and a journey since then. So I think a lot of technologists get very uncomfortable with, how do I know I need to know everything in this modality? Well, here's the answer to it. You're not going to know everything, and you're not going to know everything up front. I mean, those are cold, hard facts that you are just not going to get everything that you need to know in, 6 weeks, 6 months, or even a year. Now, you can learn the basics and hardwire the basics in a short amount of time. Because if you get the bread and butter and the basics of setting up your exam, isocentering your patient, knowing how much contrast volume, knowing which protocol to pick, like the simple things and the simple steps are very easy to navigate. But it's those complex exams, patients that are contracted, trauma patients, patients who can't hold their breath, they are intubated, they have a ton of drips, they are on ECMO, chest tubes, you name it. That is something that it comes with experience in just learning how to do it. Now, I've done my own research as far as researching if there is a good CT school or a hospital-based program or something out there that will help the technologists that are struggling. Now, I know in the state that I'm currently in Illinois, there's only I want to say 4 colleges in one university that exists. And I did my due diligence to look at their curriculum to see if they really offer what you really need to know when you go out there and do the clinical part, the clinical setting of CT. Now, most of their programs are based on a lot of physics, which I'm not saying that you don't need to learn physics, because you absolutely do, as far as, with the registry and just knowing the different types of physics that go into CT. Now, what I'm saying is that the common sense and knowing what you're doing out on that floor and in that scan room, that's what really needs to be hardwired in most of these CT based programs, which I really didn't see a lot of it. And I know we have CT students that do come through our facility at our hospital, and I just don't see that part. So I've taken my experience, because I do not gatekeep anything. I always love to share knowledge, and I always will continue to share knowledge, that this is the area where we need to dial in and help these technologists succeed. Like, give them the basics, give them the education, give them, workshops, trainings, whatever the case is. So I have taken the time to start creating some of that material so that it will help the newer technologists that are coming into play, and even the older technologists that need that refresher or feel like they didn't get enough training and education when they started out. So I hope this episode was very helpful for you. So what I want you to take away from it is, I want you to ask yourself a couple questions. Is your CT training really adequate? And really be honest with yourself, because we have to be honest with ourselves when it comes to that. The second thing that I really want you to take away and ask yourself is, how can I make my training, my experience, and my education better? And how can I start doing that today? So those are two big questions that I want you to ask yourself, so that you can get a good perspective on how you are going to become the best technologist you can. And I guarantee you, you will be very, very successful. Once you kind of be honest with yourself, know what you need to work on, and just get it done. So I hope this episode was helpful for you. I really enjoyed talking about this topic, along with future topics for this podcast. You can also DM me with any questions or feedback that you might have. I am on Instagram. My Instagram handle is the CT Educator. You're always welcome to email me your questions, feedback, anything that you would like answered at contact@thecteducator.com. I will have all these links in the show notes so that you know exactly where to submit your questions, follow, give some feedback. If you have any ideas for a future episode, please let me know. And thank you so much for listening, and can't wait to see you in the next episode.